My name is Ayesha Hazarika. I used to be a political advisor. I'm now a commentator, writer, broadcaster and stand-up comedian. I'm here at the Edinburgh Festival. I've just done my first show. It's about politics, it's about feminism, it's about the Labour Party. It's called Tales from the Pink Bus. I got into stand-up a long time ago, like about 15, 16 years ago. And I did this course in stand-up comedy that taught you about what it was like to be a stand-up comedian, some of the kind of basic techniques. So I did that course, got out on the open mic circuit and just did loads and loads of gigs. I have to say some really awful gigs, like quite often playing to sort of two men and a dog and getting heckled by the dog, you know, that sort of like not glamorous. And I kind of did it for about 5-6 years before I got a job in politics. I think the fact that actually I'd sort of cut my teeth on the stand-up comedy circuit actually probably helped me to do quite well in politics, because again, as you say, they're both very male-dominated. People often feel they can't book more than one female act on a mixed bill. It's almost like if you have two female acts, they're either going to start fighting or they're going to suddenly have their period all at the same time, or something like disastrous or like calamitous is going to happen. And I think that's quite similar with politics. I think people sort of think, well, there's one woman leading, and like you've got Theresa May now who's Prime Minister, so what's the problem? You know, feminism is done in politics, it's all good. So my entire show this year is all about politics. I think what's interesting is that more comedians are talking about politics now. Perhaps that's because politics has just gone so bonkers over the last year, and particularly post the Brexit vote. So I think from what I've seen coming back to Edinburgh and the few shows that I've dipped in and out of, most comedians are now sort of venturing into talking about politics, partly because I think that's where the national mood is. I think there is a desire to try and make sense of what's happening in politics, and humour can be very useful to do that. So I think that's the big thing I've noticed. And also, good to see more women. I was really pleased at the BBC Talent final. It was 50% men, 50% women, which I think is like a first for the BBC. It's not going to come as breaking news to you that, guess what? There are not that many women that have real power in politics. Who knew? And now you'll probably remember the very infamous, notorious pink bus that Labour did. It was part of our women's campaign. The aim of the pink bus was very noble and worthy. It was to make sure that women's voices were heard in the Labour Party's election campaign. It did get a lot of coverage, but it was very controversial, and a lot of people absolutely hated it. So I've sort of done this show explaining why the whole pink bus came around and looking at some of the deeper issues, as I say, about power and feminism in politics. One of my former bosses, Harriet, Harman, has been absolutely brilliant. She's been hugely supportive, and she came to see one of my Edinburgh previews. I was so nervous about her being in the audience because I do quite a send-up of her, and I do like impressions of her and stuff, and she absolutely loved it. My show is all about politics and where real power lies in a political party. And so you have lots of front of house people who are MPs, and they're very important. But actually, there's lots of power that's behind the scenes in politics. And unfortunately, the people that have their hands in the levers of that power tend to be male, they tend to be Oxbridge, they tend to be white, they tend to be sort of middle class, elitist, from a very narrow pool of people. And so the central kind of message of my show is that we need more women involved at every level of politics. Yes, the front of house is very important, but women shouldn't just be there as window dressing. We've actually got to have real power when it comes to decision making and policy making and political strategy. Girls need to be doing strategy, not just making sandwiches.